Hello, beautiful alchemist. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and I am so excited about today's conversation, as I tend to be. One of the things I love about the podcast, and hopefully you are enjoying as well, is we really get to have some interesting conversations with interesting people. And so, as a community, we have this opportunity to learn so much and to expand our curiosity and our practices and our healing processes. So, today is no different. We are going to speak to a woman named Christina Prokos, and she is a certified intuitive counselor, life coach, spiritual healer, psychic medium, and a facilitator of soul retrieval. And that's actually what we focus on primarily today is soul retrieval and what soul fragments are. We also talk a lot about healing traumas, what that looks like, what that means. And these may be topics, of course, that a lot of you are already familiar with. However, the way that she gives perspective to it all, I think will clarify a lot for a lot of you. So, Christina has dedicated her life to helping others heal, grow, and connect with their true potential. And she possesses a deep awareness of trauma's complex role in shaping our lives. She offers clients a compassionate yet direct approach, skillfully guiding them through their healing journeys. And she has recently started a podcast called the Soul Thrive Podcast, a space that's dedicated to exploring healing, self expression, and the pursuit of authentic connection. So you can check out the podcast and you can also learn more about Christina's work at ChristinaProkos.com. Of course, the link to her work is down in the show description. We went all over the map in this conversation, and I really hope you enjoy it. She even slid in a little bit of a clue of being a star seed, but don't worry about it. I asked her to give us more details around that. Yeah, I just think there's a bit in this conversation that will speak to all of us. I hope you enjoy, and I will see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, we are here today with Christina Prokos. Christina, thank you so much for taking time to come have this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm excited.
Yeah, I always get excited about conversations that I know people have a lot of curiosity around.
Mhm.
And so when I was reading about your work, of course, I thought, oh, everyone is going to really, really dig this. Before we get into it, though, we are going to talk a lot about soul fragments, soul retrieval, trauma healing, all of these things.
Mhm.
But just curious, what led you into the work that you're offering now?
I do think it's a life path for me. It is something that I came in here with the objective of actually doing. So it is like what we refer to as the contract of whatever my experience is. However, from the journey of that experience, it was very different. I went through my own childhood traumas and experiences. You have to have some examples there in order for you to be able to relate and connect with individuals. And then I really did rebel against my own authentic gifts, and so there was a bit of a struggle with that too, to accept it before I actually like leaned into doing this. And it was a progression. Like it wasn't just automatically, here I am and I'm now doing soul retrieval or helping people's inner child. I just knew I could connect with people's deceased loved ones. And I knew that I could see guides, or I just had a knowing of certain experiences that were going on. Of course, I think the first level was a lot of that psychic intuition, premonition kind of stuff. My family in general, they dream, they're big on dreams. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of that process that happens. So I do come from both sides. Now I'm learning more about my mom's side of her lineage as well and what her intuition is all about. But mostly it came from my father's side of the family. My grandmother had this, my great grandmother had this. And then I've just kind of organically learned more about it with working with my guides, and of course
Mhm.
obviously working with my clients as well for such a long time. I've built a very good foundation for myself to kind of go deeper in more aspects of what this ability is. So yeah, so it's just been, like I said, I've had my experiences from a very young age, and being able to see spirit at a very young age felt normal. but it wasn't normal, obviously, when you're little.
Yeah.
The realm is very easy for us to, there's not that veil. So we have the ability when you're a child to see so much of the spiritual realms and experiences. And then obviously, as we start to get conditioned in society, that starts to change because then everything starts to become more of a solid experience than an energetic experience.
Right.
So, yeah, so then I navigated through all of that and here I am doing what I'm doing. I don't know.
No, it's
Sums it
incredible.
up.
Actually, with everything you said, I was just scribbling. There are several questions that come up out of that. So,
Hmm.
one of the things I have to point out, when you mentioned childhood trauma, and
Hmm.
you mentioned how, but it gives us some kind of context. It gives us example and experiences to have understanding as we grow.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if you could just talk a little bit about that, your view on that, because a lot of people will look at their childhood trauma almost as like some type of punishment to their soul,
Mhm.
or, what did I do to deserve this? And granted, there are so many things we encounter that no one, we could say should have to go through, right? But
Mhm.
could you explain a little bit about that? How some of the things we go through, it really is for our learning and expansion and understanding.
Yeah, I think that when we look at childhood experiences and childhood traumas, they're really helping us also advance spiritually in a lot of ways. So, when we go through certain experiences, obviously, as traumatic as they can be, and the things that the level of suffering that could happen with that, there really is this soul evolution that occurs within ourselves. So,
Mhm.
it really does help us. If we don't have the experiences that we go through, then we can't necessarily define our character and we can't necessarily define, who we are and what gifts and experiences that we can actually bring forth into this reality and heal more of our ancestral issues, traumas, karmic ties from this esoteric perspective, from
Right.
a like third dimensional perspective. It sucks when you go through trauma. It's not easy. It's something that really can cause people to go into a lot of their coping mechanisms, addictive behavior patterns, and so on and so forth. But any person that I've ever met that has gone through really intense childhood traumas and they're willing to explore and see it, they really do help humanity on so many different levels. They
Yeah.
really do have these abilities to step in, whether it's counseling, whether it's working with children, whether it's working. So it really does help us heal our planet on such a bigger scale.
Right.
So I think that, I mean, as much as I want to say I don't want anyone to go through really intense inner child trauma, but you could even tell me that you had a really good childhood and there's still trauma.
Yeah.
So there's a spectrum, right? It depends on what the experience is in that you came also in with the objective of learning. So often when you go through spiritual traumas, or childhood traumas, it is the spiritual lesson that you wanted to learn to help you spiritually advance your soul in this experience. So you come in here with a buffet of experiences and choices that you want to have. And so by going through these lessons, you have the opportunity to really embrace what it would feel like for you to move into the direction of manifesting the experiences that you want. So
Yeah.
it is inner child healing or inner child trauma is extremely profound in our ability to really help us understand and experience life's buffet of experiences. And it really can pull you into alignment or out of alignment, and both matter.
Yeah.
So it's so true to teaching us our authenticity. It's so true in teaching us our ability to navigate our relationships and so much more. So there's a reason for it, and good or bad as it may be, it helps our evolution, our spiritual
Yeah.
evolution.
No, I agree. And it's interesting hearing you say this. And I know we're going to get more into um, the soul retrieval, soul fragments, and these sorts of things. But even from what you're saying, it reminds me so much of how our perspective contributes a great deal to our healing, like what we will allow and
Mhm.
what we will not just allow ourselves to witness and not avoid, but again, how we take that in and process it, the level of understanding around it. I
Mhm.
always think of how you can have people, several people go through the same or very similar traumatic experience, and some will take that and become an advocate or use it
Hmm.
to like champion that others don't have to go through that same thing, whatever it may be. But then on the other hand, there are some people that it totally debilitates them. And not saying that either is right or wrong, but just really want to highlight for everyone how
Hmm.
impactful our
Oh yeah.
perspective is within our healing. So I could talk to you about that all day, but there are other things that you brought up. The natural inclination. So one of the things you mentioned is dreams. And interestingly, there have been several people recently who have brought this up. And I
Hmm.
know a lot of people have a curiosity around dream work. But before we get to that, talking about these natural inclinations you had as a child,
Yep.
a lot of people also start to recognize that hindsight, like, oh, I did used to have certain kinds of experiences, and for whatever reason, that becomes suppressed, or like you say, things become more material focused and we move away. But for people that have these more natural inclinations that may stick with them,
Hmm.
do you notice a difference in I want to say like that route of development? Because of course we're all designed to function in higher ways than we may know. And so
Hmm.
you can go to classes and crack open all of these different systems, right? But if you already have an inclination, say, towards mediumship or having prophetic dreams or whatever it may be, how do you stick to that? Like what about your life did it make you like totally veer away from what was already present?
So I think for me, I've always been interested in knowing and understanding people on different levels and experiences. So for
Yeah.
me, it was like, there's got to be more than just what we are and who we are. And
Hmm.
I had that curiosity. So I think a curiosity of like being able to explore multifaceted experiences plays a significant role on how you're going to be able to
Yeah.
move through these experiences. The issue I find where people may feel stuck or stagnant or not really trust that within themselves is when they've been really conditioned and they have these really hard belief systems that have been instilled in them from their childhood that doesn't give them the opportunity to explore. There's no exploration, no curiosity, no ability to kind of like challenge even it. Like, I don't believe that. I want to
Right.
change this. I want to. And so there's conflict because we, as human beings, we want to have a sense of belonging no matter what. We want to be
Yeah.
in a community. We want to be able to fit in to a degree. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want that. I didn't care for that. I think that I loved everybody and I wanted to connect people and I wanted to have that type of experience. And I had lots of friends growing up as a kid, good, bad, all types of experiences. But for me, and I grew up in an environment where my father was someone who was like, well, challenge that, think of that differently, explore that in a different point of view. Like, there has to be other ways of looking at this. Like, what would you do if you were in that situation? He was asking me these questions that when I was like 7 or 8.
Wow.
I was like, Dad, like, I just want you to give me the answer. He's like, no, like, explore what that is. Or you made a mistake. Okay. So what we're going to do with that. So I learned at a young age that I have this fluidity, this opportunity to really change and choose and challenge belief systems, whereas maybe some other person in their childhood did not. They didn't
Right.
have that. They had to be the good little girl or the good little boy, and they had to abide by certain expectations based on image or a sense of belonging in a community. I mean, I also think too, religion plays a significant role on the influence of certain things as well, good and bad.
Hmm.
So there are so many different spectrums of how someone could navigate their experiences. I think that if someone is curious about doing this, I think they have to really first challenge the way that they were raised and the belief systems and like what fears of rejection would come up. Because, going into the space of I grew up like Greek Orthodox, right? So the church that I grew up in, there's no such thing as psychics, or like they do believe like, yes, people can have gifts, but like, is this a negative thing? Like, is
Right.
this something bad? Is this, and I had a deep connection to my faith and my process, and that came from my grandmother. She really instilled that in me. But she was also someone who was like, just do good, be good, try to go out there and have different experiences. So I had elements, as much as my trauma was very extensive in my childhood, I had other elements in my childhood that gave me the freedom of exploration. And because my grandmother was also somebody who put a massive emphasis on like, oh, I had this dream, and like, this means this, and I think this is going to happen, then I had that curiosity of like, okay, well, I'm getting these symbolisms from, the spirit realm or the dream world, and now I can choose to do something with that. I think people are scared because they don't know. There's nothing, if you can't see it, doesn't feel tangible, doesn't feel real, doesn't feel like I can do something with that.
Yeah.
So it really is about letting go of the resistance in the thinking as well, and being able to ask yourself, like, are you willing to maybe be a little different,
Yeah.
right? Be a little
Yes.
bit different. What would that look like? How would that define your uniqueness and your authenticity? And I think that I'd love more people to challenge that.
Yeah. No, listen, you're speaking my language. That's one of the things I always say of why I love this work so much. I think because I'm a naturally curious person. And so I'm always brought into spaces of awe and wonder just because I'm curious. And I
Hmm.
think that curiosity also helps to keep us out of those limitations and those boundaries that would otherwise be
Yep.
self-inflicted and a lot of times even unconscious, right? So again, here you go. All these things you say, I'm like, oh, ah, ah. The sense of belonging, yeah, 100%. There's a huge fear around that. And so many people come into this work or start discovering layers of themselves and then kind of stay hidden behind the scenes. So they'll still present in the world the way they think they're supposed to,
Yep.
and then have this whole other like alternate life behind the scenes of these explorations. It's very interesting how a lot of this will push you into how willing are you to be in your authenticity. But I just want to highlight something you said for parents, teachers, everyone, how beautiful it is to ask children what they think rather than always telling them what to think.
Hmm.
I always say I'm thankful because I had a mother that was the same. I mean, if I
Right.
asked her anything, she was like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Lady,
Exactly.
but
Just give
yeah,
me the
just
answer.
give me the answer." No, that never happened. Um,
Exactly.
but I also love, Christina, that you highlight that there were other good elements in your life beyond just the trauma.
Yes.
And the reason that really stood out to me is because a lot of times we can get stuck in one story
Hmm.
rather than recognizing the entire picture of our lives. And this is not just the past, that could be present day, right? Where
Exactly.
every area of life is okay except one area. And we just highlight that one thing as if everything else is wrong. So now I want to get into this trauma healing, but first want to ask you about soul fragments, just
Hmm.
starting there. Before
Yeah.
we retrieve anything, what are our soul fragments?
So soul fragments are like these. So when we go through really traumatic experiences, sometimes what happens is there's a soul loss or a split in consciousness, because it's a way to protect a child from the experiences,
Mhm.
or adult going through an experience.
Right.
And so what happens is the consciousness starts to split. And what it does is it's a way of protecting you so that you have the ability to still navigate through your experiences. So it's like kind of like a safety mechanism
Yeah.
provided by the universe, so that you have the ability to kind of put that there for when you're ready to deal with it
Mhm.
and ready to heal from it. However, what starts to happen is when you don't heal from it and you don't acknowledge it, it starts to amp up. So experiences in your life, those fragmentations start to become highlighted in your visual construct in your world. And so it starts to become this experience where you're attracting the trauma for it to integrate, for
Mhm.
it to process. And it's being highlighted in your vibration So you're going to attract similar people and experiences that seemed like recurring patterns or cycles or loops. I call it traumatic fixations, usually coming in to highlight that fragment that needs integrating it. It needs now your attention. It needs now you to bring it home and bring it, because there's a purpose for you to bring it home now.
Yeah.
Now, but you have to work through the construct first. You have to be able to say to yourself, okay, now I'm ready to see this. Now I'm ready to understand this. Now I'm ready to work on this part of me. Because when we're kids, when we're going through trauma, we don't have that capacity. We
Mhm.
don't have the language. We don't have the ability to move through our experiences. And unfortunately, most of these experiences that have caused us trauma are with our caregivers, our parents, and people around us. And so if we can't feel like we could trust them enough to go and have that conversation, or them parent us in a way where they can talk to us about our emotions and help us understand how to navigate our emotions, then the soul loss and the soul fragment starts to become, like I said, it amps up as you become an adult. So there are many phases of how you're going to track that. And then, of course, how you're going to cope with that. So
Yeah.
then coping mechanisms kick in. And usually the similar coping mechanisms are those that you've adapted from your childhood experiences based on mom or dad's experiences. So these adaptations start to become more present as you become a teenager, as you become an adult, and so on and so forth. And so it depends on what spectrum you go. Obviously, we live in a society where it's, we're so focused on achieving and doing and being, and we've got to,
Mhm.
we stick on this journey of image and status than we do on integrating healing and trauma. And so there's a lot of conflicts that are going to keep highlighting themselves. And often I hear people when they get to a point where they're like, I just don't know what else to do. I've gone to therapy. I've done so many other things. I'm on medication. Nothing is working. And I'm still feeling like I've lost a part of myself. That's when I go in, I go, okay, well, I register where that part of your soul loss is. And now I have to bring it home.
Yes. Okay. That's a beautiful segue into the next layer of this. But I have to say, it's interesting. I don't know what is happening, but having this conversation with you, so many visuals are coming in, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I'll have a lot of questions. And again, I'm curious, but the
Yep.
visuals are almost distracting me talking to you. I don't know what's going on.
Sorry.
No,
Just
but
my energy. My
yeah, I'm like,
apologies.
what? This is crazy. But when you were talking about this and even the word fragments and the way that you describe that we may, put them off to the side, I literally saw like this kind of like a shattering of the self, right? And then
Mhm.
there's this hole. And it made me think of how a lot of times we try to fill voids. We hear a lot about
Huh?
filling a void, but then also having compassion for the various ways that we may deal with that, right? Because when you're saying it this visual came of what if someone had dealt with some sort of abuse and then they
Yep.
grow up and they could perhaps then seek someone in their life to fill that void, to be like a protector, like someone that they view as will always protect me. But then on the other hand, some people may take on the role of abuser so that
Mhm.
they feel safe to not be abused again. And
Of course.
then there are people that may just shut down and not want a relationship at all, right? And so it's just interesting to think of, again, no matter how similar some of these experiences may be for us, the variations in how we respond to that fragmented state is
Mhm.
just, it's incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, get it out of
Well,
my
those are
head
those are
though.
your those. Well, welcome to my clients say that a lot. Like, yeah, you came into my dream last night, or I think of you and you're like gonna say something. I'm like, I laugh about them. Like, yeah, I'm in your head, I guess.
But okay, so this, like I said, is a beautiful segue into the retrieval aspect. So
Yeah,
a lot of people may have heard of soul retrieval, and it's commonly discussed in the realm of shamanic work. So
it is. Yes.
yeah, could you talk a little bit about what it
So,
is?
so it is a shamanic ancient practice, and there
Mhm.
is beautiful ceremonies that go on with that process.
Yeah.
With my abilities, though, it's been modernized. So basically, I have the ability because I work with the spirit guides that I do, and because I do have an alien DNA thought pattern as well that's very integrated in my process. And I came in here with the knowledge and the understanding of what this actually is going to look like. I can integrate it a lot quicker than having to do a full ceremony, which I think both are important depending on how or where you are in the stage of your healing.
Yeah.
So are you asking like how it works, or because there's layers to
Well,
it?
listen, honey, first of all, with what you just said, I have a whole new question. However, just so people have an understanding of
Mhm.
just what a soul retrieval is in general, because now you've painted a picture for us about the fragmenting part.
Yes.
Yeah.
So soul retrieval, what it is I actually journey in your experience and your trauma. And my job is to find out where the soul loss actually is. Now I will go to the initial point that it happened. So I will be able to see the actual trauma that occurred. I am actually walking in the room that it's happened. I'm witnessing the actual experience for what it actually is. And my job is to save that part of you and integrate the soul fragment that's lost home. So often, what I do is I'm navigating, and I never navigate the spiritual realm without my spirit animal, Sabi.
Mhm.
She's a Black Panther, and she's also something that transforms into Egyptian lineage and a cat as well. So she can navigate exactly, that's what I said. So she can navigate the spiritual realm much faster and easier. I can too, but she's my protector while I'm
Yes.
through it, because there's multiple layers of where a soul loss can go. So and then I go in and I can see the first initial trauma, or where they need to take me, and who, even if there was an individual that took that soul part from you,
Mhm.
who took that innocence, who betrayed you, who caused you the most amount of grief and pain, where that split in consciousness comes from. And then my job, like I said, is to change that construct. And what I will do is then work with the energy or that experience that caused that initial trauma, and shift that in your current state, and then breathe that back into your soul,
Okay.
and then it connects back home. And then when I'm done, I will tell my client, okay, I walk through this and this is what I saw. And my client's like, oh my god, that was my childhood home, and this is what this happened, and oh my god, I can't, like, to the degree where I'm telling them the colors of their walls, the picture that I'm
Wow.
seeing, you know, all of that construct all together. And so that gives them the validation and the confirmation that I'm not just making this up. I'm here and I'm with you and I'm experiencing it and I'm feeling all your emotions and I'm understanding, like, I've become a conduit to that experience as well. And then I'm bringing that part home for you. And then I breathe it back into their soul energy, they say it every single time, like, that I feel different. Like,
Yeah.
I feel different. And then I'll say, okay, it's going to take some time to integrate this back into your world, back into your reality, because this is new
Mhm.
energy. This
Yeah.
is going to bring in a whole different type of experience for you, something that has been lost for a very long time. And you're now going to learn this part of you and what this represents for you. And all my clients I've done soul retrieval on, or inner child healing, picking up the fragmented pieces, have said, you know, this shifted in my reality after, and I aligned with that, or I'm communicating differently, or now I feel whole based on that, or now I'm not going back to an addictive behavior pattern or a coping mechanism. There is a massive shift that occurs, which is like the most amazing experience out of it, which I love seeing my clients communicate to me about, like, within the next, like, it takes about, I think, 2.5, 3 weeks for them to kind of like, okay, now I get what this was.
Yeah.
And they just feel different and it feels beautiful. So yeah, so it's a very interesting type of experience.
Wow. Okay. So a couple of things. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening? All right. Have you ever heard of I think it's pronounced kintsugi? It's a
Kinsey.
Japanese art form where if say something's broken, then they repair
Mhm.
it with filling the cracks with gold.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yes, that's the feeling that's coming to mind when you
Mm.
describe this,
It's a beautiful way of putting it. Yeah.
yeah, like just refilling once you retrieve it, refilling with the gold, but then having to then acclimate and get used
Hmm.
to what that may be. But things that are broken can still be beautiful, essentially, right? especially in the process of healing. And I'm glad you bring up the integration because I always think that's important for people to understand. It's not necessarily an overnight process. Like you're going to
No.
have to now grow through whatever the healing process may be. But I have a question for you, Christina.
Mhm.
Just what your
Yep.
point of view is about this. The agreements, right? So even how you mentioned in the beginning, we have soul contracts and agreements.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, when they go through certain traumas, that's one of their biggest questions of like, did I agree to this, or was this just on the because of the will of the other person that this may have happened? What have you
It depends.
seen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the spiritual aspect, the esoteric aspect, yes, it was a soul contract. It was a karmic relationship. It was a soul loss relationship because there's different forms.
Mhm.
You're going to come in with a soul contract. A soul contract usually is a really good experience.
Yeah.
Soul contracts will come in and will help highlight your experiences and help you grow and spiritually evolve. So usually soul contracts aren't so enmeshed in trauma.
Yes.
They help you get out of the trauma. So like a
Okay.
mentor, a spiritual guide, a healer, a teacher. So a soul contract will come in as a guide to help you move through the trauma.
Yeah.
But if it's a soul loss and if it's a karmic relationship, then yeah, those ones are linked more to the trauma and the experiences that you came into so that you can navigate that spiritual evolution and
Yeah.
through, like I said, the buffet of experiences that you wanted to have if you wanted
Yes.
to learn and grow and so on. Now it varies when I work with a client at the beginning. I never communicate that to them
Yeah.
because it depends on, I mean, I've worked with a lot of people who've gone through sexual trauma.
Hmm.
So how do I tell a person who's gone through
Right.
sexual trauma at the beginning of the stages of whatever we're working on that this was a soul loss or a karmic relationship for this experience? I don't.
Right.
What we do is we focus a lot on, understanding the why and the here and the now and the experiences and what this is creating as far as their reality is and what they're attracting. And so my job is to help like be the soul contract that
Hmm.
comes in as that mentor or guide to help them understand where they're at, what they need to do. And then eventually, as we start doing more of that fragmentation, integrative work, they start to change, which means the belief systems start to change. The way that they operate starts to change. Their belief systems in general start to evolve. And now down the road, we can then have the conversation. So
Yeah.
I've worked with clients, like I said, I have gone through sexual abuse myself. And so I know what the spectrum is, right?
Right.
And the journey of that experience. And so when I work with my clients, like I have a client now who I've been working with for, she decided to stay with me for X amount of years because I don't let anyone, like, I'm your soul contract. We could be 6 months together, a day together, 10 years together. It really doesn't
Right.
matter. What matters is where you want to go as far as your spiritual evolution goes. And
Hmm.
so she's been someone who's been in my life. Actually, I've got a few of them that are wonderful, beautiful souls. But this abuse was so extensive and so traumatic for her. And it, took so many years for us to just get to this point finally where we
Yeah.
can have the conversation of, you know, you brought this in for this experience. And
Right.
now she can see it. Now she gets it. 6 years ago, 5 years ago, no, and we had to work on the anger. We had to
Yeah.
really just kind of define it and get aggressive with it and like, who her abuser was and so on and so forth. So this is what we talk about, the layers of healing, the layers
Right.
of the experience, the layers of trauma. And I think that people have to understand that when you're doing this work, you have to keep hitting another layer. And for you to then eventually get to the point, because it's hard for me to turn to you and say, well, you attracted the experience. And it's like,
Right.
and it's going to help you get here in the moment that you're in it. Are you kidding me? Why? Why? I don't want to attract that experience.
Right.
Right. And so we've got these childhood fragmentations and traumas that are creating the relationships that we're having right now. We are actually reliving them over and over and over again. So I have to educate the person about what happened here and why you're attracting this there. And then maybe we can get to the core of understanding like there's a spiritual purpose for this. You asked for to understand how to set better boundaries or to step into your empowerment or to really push forward in, your purpose.
Yeah.
But it's peeling those layers, like I said.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you clarified that because I know that can be a big hurdle for a lot of people who are dealing with, working in shadow work or even dealing with childhood trauma, these kinds of things. Just at the very surface, the idea of I wouldn't have done this to myself, so to speak, right? Like there's no way my soul could have chosen something like this. And I think what you're mentioning is so important, not just the stages and the layers of the healing process, but also the communication is huge. And I hope that anyone listening that may work in this arena is really
Mhm.
taking this in because a lot of times people will communicate we'll say layers in a way that someone may not be ready for yet.
For
So
sure.
also having that mindfulness and understanding of you don't have to let the whole cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Oh no, and we don't want
Like
to.
yeah,
And we don't want
right.
to. We don't want to
Yes,
open Pandora's box right away. You've
right.
got to do it. You've got to do it in phases and you've got to build trust, especially
Yes.
when you're working with people who've gone through sexual abuse and sexual
Yeah.
trauma and have been victims to that. You've got to build trust. They've got to trust you.
Right. And I love what you highlight as well to inspire people listening with no matter what you've gone through, that there's always this potential to reclaim yourself.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people often struggle with as well, feeling like they gave their power away or feeling like someone took a piece of them, like you've mentioned,
The
right?
soul loss part. Yeah.
Yes, the soul loss. And so to have that feeling, just to even know there's a potential that you can reclaim some aspect of yourself and reclaim your power. And I think that in of itself is very inspiring. Now, I want to come back to this because this
Mhm.
is all so incredible, Christina. However, you mentioned something a little while ago that I cannot let just slide by. Okay.
Okay.
I cannot. Yeah, not for everyone listening, right? So you said a little bit earlier, part of your process, because essentially you're doing a soul retrieval, what many people may be familiar with in the shamanic lineages, but you've really modernized it in a way. And so you mentioned earlier that you have this alien thought pattern. And I was like,
Mhm.
does she mean quite literally? Like, is
Yep.
she one? Okay.
Literally. Oh,
Because
yes.
you hear a lot now about star seeds
Mhm.
and so just curious. I was like, you can't just slide that under the door, Christina. Like, so
Right.
are you
Okay.
working with like other realms of consciousness? Has that fed
Yes.
into the
Yes.
type of work that you're doing?
Yes.
Tell us what you're
100%.
willing to say. Yeah.
I will say that I am very much connected to the Palladian lineage,
Yes.
and they work very much with me.
Okay.
And they do definitely work with Christ consciousness
Mhm.
and the evolution of helping individuals heal um, love and the planet and so much more. And
Yeah.
so they're very much with me. And
Yeah.
there are other hybrids of experiences, but that one is one that comes through the most when we're having certain experiences. But like I said, I also work with like a guide who's a shaman, and I also work with my guides. There's so many
Right.
different layers to what that is. Now, I mean, does it matter? Not necessarily. I think what matters the most is that as a species in general, we are getting more comfortable with understanding that there is more than meets
Mhm.
the eye, and that we are coming in with these types of experiences and we're advancing our ability to take wisdom and ancient healing modalities and integrate them and evolve them
Right.
and help us do it faster, quicker,
Yeah.
because now we need that in our society more. So it took a long time for me to understand what it was for
Yeah.
such a long time. Now I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
Would never say it in public before or even like vocalize it, but my
Yes.
clients have an awareness and I've been doing this work for a very long time, but I don't highlight it as much as I guess maybe I should, only because I think for me, what matters the most is resolving trauma and resolving conflict. So whoever wants to work with me in order to integrate that and make people feel like whole again, I don't
Yeah.
care. Like,
Well,
hey, you want
this
to be that?
this brings up the question then too, because I know people will wonder, when they come to work with you in
Mhm.
this space that you hold, is it also common that their guides will come through or
Oh yeah,
different energies that
absolutely.
support them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're working as a team. So
Yes.
their guides come in and my guides, and there's a deliberation that's
Yeah.
happening. There's a conversation that's happening, and I'm just the medium. I'm
Mhm.
here to just communicate whatever that is that I'm supposed to do or see or understand, and then provide that process and help that energy. Actually, this weekend I just hosted a mediumship connecting with, it was like more like connecting with your guides and connecting with your medium deceased loved ones, and then there was a soul retrieval. There was 50 people in the room, right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, this was the first time I'd ever offered it in that capacity. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? Oh my God. Like, what is happening right now? I was so nervous because I thought, like, this is just, I don't think this is realistic for me to be able to do 50.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did 50 in like 2 hours. And people were like, what just happened? And I was like, okay, your guides, everybody stepped forward and everybody was on board. And we all had this beautiful experience of collectively. And it was just like this deliberation, talking to them, talking to your guides, and then just them understanding. It was just a really, really great experience overall. So
I
yeah,
love
it was
that
a
you
lot.
share that because it's funny how many times I'll hear, and I've experienced it too, where you're doing this work at, we'll say, one level, and then there's some inspiration or an opportunity for you to come out of your comfort zone.
Oh
And
yeah.
how many times people really kind of, you know, fight against it. But when you do, it seems like those things appear when there is a readiness. And even though you
Mhm.
have all of this fear maybe arise, you do it anyway.
Yeah,
And then
it
it,
felt, yeah.
yeah, and it
People
shifts
were
you.
saying, yeah, it was like this moment or this experience because I've just now moved into ninth dimensional perspectives because I was operating in 76, 7, and 8.
Mhm.
So a lot to do with the Akashic records, a lot
Yeah.
to do with working with guides and angels and all of that. And then there was an upgrade to ninth dimensional perspectives. And I'm just learning how to navigate that right now.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that feels like, but then they're showing me like, hey, there's 50 people in this room and you can do this. And I was like,
Right.
oh my God, it felt fluid. It felt like
Yes.
this, like I was so nervous because, and I still get nervous too. I don't know if you're like
Yeah.
this with me too, but like even if you're doing a one-on-one or a reading or something like that, I still get nervous because I'm like, who's going to show up? How's this going to
Oh,
go down?
100%.
How am I going to integrate this trauma for you? Like it still always feels like a new experience every single time.
Yes. Hmm.
And so I think that that's the fun and energy and like that experience. And then, doing it felt very interesting because it just felt like once you let go and you're in it, it's not about you.
Right.
It's nothing to
Yes.
do about it. Has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with what the collective experience needs.
Yes. It's so funny you say it reminds me of two things. One, I've talked about before how it seems like there were different stages in my journey, like not just with my personal healing, but also the type of clients that would come in these different stages
Yeah.
and what working with different people would teach me in the process of my own healing, but also just my own process of working with energy, right? But then I also talk about how energy itself has been one of my greatest teachers, and that includes my guides.
Hmm.
And there was a point where I used to go into the Akashic records every day. And unlike, most people want to know about their life or I I couldn't have cared less. I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
so curious about, tell me about universal laws and tell me about
Mhm.
what is this energy work really about? And so to your point, you remind me of again how that openness of mind and that curiosity ends up being one of the greatest tools in this work. But I have to ask you, Christina, because can you believe we're almost out of time?
Yeah.
Yeah, like how people may recognize this as a viable option for them. Like, is it just people who recognize they're in a certain pattern or behavior that they're like, why is this happening to me? Is it because you're in a cycle of, sadness? What tends to be the thing that people know this might work for me?
So there's a spectrum, I would
Okay.
say, depending on like some individuals will tell me like they're aware that they had a lot of stuff happen in their childhood and their experiences. And so innately they'll be like, I don't remember much. I don't have a
Right.
lot of memory, but I know that like I've been through a lot and I'm seeing now that there's these repetitive patterns, cycles, and experiences showing up.
Yeah.
And that's an indicator for me that there is a lot of trauma and soul loss there and fragmentation that needs to be integrated. Another aspect too is understanding like the relationship dynamics that you have right now. If you've gone through grief, loss, betrayal, divorce,
Yeah.
all of that too can cause soul loss.
Right.
And right. And so if you're saying and you're in your grief or you're in your sadness or you're in these cycles and you're repeating to yourself, I feel like a part of me is gone.
Yes.
That's an indicator that there is soul loss and that there is something that you need to bring back home because you're not in your joy. You're not in your ability to change your experiences. You are operating with a part of you that's gone.
I have to ask you this, and I meant to ask you a few minutes ago, but I'm glad you just said what you said. So, do you find that there is always some connection back to childhood? So, even if
Yes.
it's something that I'm experiencing now that seems like a current loss period or current trauma, is there usually an underbelly that directly aligns it with something that
So
happened
I
in
always say
earlier
yes,
years?
yes. So childhood experiences play a significant role, but then there's also karmic experiences too. So
Okay.
sometimes they can go as far back as being in your mother's womb
Hmm.
and then recognizing that the karma is with your mom and her experiences and those ties. So it's an ancestral thing. There
Yeah.
are different layers. So there's like the lower layer of trauma, which shamanic work, which is all about, the inner child traumas. And then there's the medium realm, which has everything to do with, current environmental stressors and relationship dynamics.
Mhm.
Then there's, another aspect of like the void and the dreams that we talked about, which is a lot. Often people will say, I had these dreams and a lot of symbolisms come up. And then there's these subconscious parts that are communicating to us. So it's multifaceted. It's not just like one linear type of experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a lot of ways of looking at that. But yeah. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to add there. No, I think that's what they wanted me to say. So
Okay.
I was like, "Mm, okay.
I feel like there was so much packed in this conversation. I'm like, oh my goodness. But again, I don't want to run out of time without people knowing different ways to work with you, but also to connect to a bigger network of your work. So, could you tell us a bit about, first of all, the Soul Thrive podcast and what the
Yeah.
conversations are about there?
So the Soul Thrive podcast, I have my co-host Ivana with me, and she is fantastic. She's the Virgo, I'm the Pisces, so she's very much organized, and I just float around, do my thing. So we decided to do the podcast. She was pushing me to do the podcast a lot. She was like, "You have so much to say, so much to talk about. We can have people come on," and I was like, "You know what? That sounds like fun." I was like, I
Yeah.
just really want to have the ability to be able to connect with people on a completely different level. And we talk a lot about like shadow work and inner child work. And we talk about people's experiences and their own healing modalities and energy and so on and so forth. So that's one aspect. And then I have my membership platform, which is Soul Thrive. And Soul Thrive, in there, we have a community of people, and I teach every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. It's recorded, different topics from spirituality to trauma, meditation, tarot readings, a whole bunch of different things. It's just
Yeah.
an opportunity to be able to offload some of that information and also have a reference for people to go to. So often my clients will go in and they'll be like, okay, I want to do like the father wound or the mother wound or rejection wound or abandonment wound. So I really do put a lot of my time and energy in educating individuals on how that looks like. So they have a good reference point. And then we build from that because then they have the ability to book a one-on-one with me. And then we can work through the traumas and experiences. You don't have to have a membership for Soul Thrive to work with me. You could
Yeah.
just work one-on-one with me and come with me with your experiences. I do find most of my clients, or if we're doing readings and I'm doing an assessment reading on someone, they do join Soul Thrive after because they want to learn more. They want to do more.
Yeah.
So it becomes this whole experience. And then I do two big workshops a year, every fall and every spring. for 8 weeks, a program, and we spend every Sunday for I think it's about 2 hours, and I teach on a specific type of trauma. Right now, I'm working on helping individuals process grief.
Mhm.
So I'm doing an 8 week program on grief and
Okay.
how soul loss and karmic relationships play a significant role on that. So specific themes come up so that I could teach. Right now, in general, collectively, we are working on grief.
Yeah.
So I also work with what's going on in the collective consciousness to help educate people more on that stuff. And then I do a retreat every so often or an event in person. So, like I just said, I just did an event that just passed not too long ago. And yeah, so I try to offer different perspectives for people.
Yes. No, I mean, that's beautiful. And I'm the same. Like, I believe, the educational piece is so important. People are lucky to find communities as such
Mhm.
where they can continue to learn and not just solely rely on the healer to do the
Agreed.
work for them. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, just so everyone knows, your website is ChristinaProkos.com. The link, of course, will be down in the show description. And then on Instagram, it's Christina_life_spiritual_. Don't
Yes.
worry. The link is also
Thank
down
you.
in the show description. Yeah, no, absolutely. I have one more question that popped up
Mhm.
for you as you
Yeah,
were saying.
absolutely.
Just wondering if you could also speak to uh the evolution of your healing work, you know, because you spoke about it in the beginning, having the insights and the dream work and these types of things, and what may have been passed down through your lineage. But obviously, from what you've shared as well, things have evolved. So
Mhm.
could you just share a little bit about, because a lot of people also, I think they have to pigeonhole themselves into
Yes.
one type of way,
Yes.
and they may limit their growth. So if you could talk about your evolution as a healer, and then also how you are healing in the process of doing the
That's
work
just
that
it.
you do.
That's it. That's it. Right there. You
Yeah.
just said it. So the more you are healing or you're doing your own self-discovery and your own work on yourself, the better you're going to be able to trust and have the curiosity to be able to move up the vibrational scale in
Yes.
order for you to learn new modalities, in order for them to see what your nervous system is even capable of handling. Because
Right.
it's easy for individuals to say, well, I can go up to the sixth dimensional perspective or seventh dimensional perspective, and now I can tune into the Akashic records.
Right.
Great, but how is that impacting your physical body and your nervous system?
Yep.
And what work have you done to ensure that you're grounded, you're neutral, that you're not absorbing the experiences that are happening in your, interactions with whomever you're healing? There's so many
Yes.
different facets. So you also have to maintain, like, I don't drink.
Hmm.
I haven't touched alcohol in over 15 years.
Yeah.
I don't
Wait,
smoke.
can I just ask you,
Yeah.
was that a natural thing for you? Because when I started this work, I used to meet my friends weekly, like for happy hour.
Yeah.
And when I started this work, all of a sudden I just didn't want it. It wasn't like
Yes.
a thing of, oh, I shouldn't do it. I just literally didn't want it. So I started getting cranberry juice in a wine glass because
Right. I love
feel
that.
social. Yeah. But was that
Yeah,
kind of,
it was.
mhm,
So I gave up like the drinking, the coffee,
yeah.
because it really does, like, first, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but just to sum it up, it's not good for your third eye.
Hmm.
And if you are someone who wants to work with intuition, you shouldn't be drinking coffee. No, I'm not going to tell anyone what to do and what
I
not
mean,
to do.
because you are
But
really
I'm
pushing it right
saying,
now, Christina.
I am saying, if you want to spiritually evolve and you have the curiosity, you also have to do the work too. It
Yeah.
doesn't just happen, right?
No,
It's like
no.
you are in here, but there are stages and you need to have a solid foundation. Because I'm going to tell you this right now, you know how easy it is to get lost. And if even just your own rejection wound,
Mhm.
just your rejection wound or your victim mentality,
Yeah.
those aspects play a significant role in how you're going to, because people are going to reject you, whether you
Yeah.
like it or not. No one's going to like everything you're going to have to say.
Right.
I've had many experiences where people were like, I don't like how you worded that, or I didn't like how you said that, or that's not me, or that's not for me. You could take
Yeah.
that personally, right?
Hmm.
It's all about me. And I did at the beginning
Yeah.
because I wasn't aware of what I was doing. And so I had to learn, I had to go through so many different experiences. And through this work, I've gone through a lot of grief as well and a lot of loss,
Yeah.
right? And it's not all butterflies and beautiful
No.
experiences. There is a lot that comes with this work.
Oh, 100%.
And I'm going to be honest, the universe does test you too.
Oh,
Remember that.
yeah,
So if you're ready, if you're willing and
yes.
ready, then you're gonna go because they want to know, are you serious about it? Do you really mean that you want to do this? And like,
Yeah.
what's your objective and what's your underlying motive? So there are many layers to that, but yeah,
Yeah. Oh, honey, you should come back just so we can talk about that. Because I say this all the time, although I've not had an in-depth conversation about it. Maybe you
love
can come
that.
back and we
Oh,
can
girl,
talk
yes,
about
let's do
that.
it.
Like, let's do it. Yeah. I have to tell you, Christina, I'm so glad that I got to
Thank
meet you
you.
today. I loved, loved, loved our conversation. And yeah, I just think there are so many juicy nuggets that you dropped on us today. There's a
Thank you
lot
so
that we
much for
learned.
having
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
I
So
appreciate
everyone,
it.
don't forget, go to ChristinaProkos.com, and her Instagram as well is down in the show description. You can work with her one-on-one. You can join the Soul Thrive community, and be sure to check out the podcast, Soul Thrive Podcast.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Thank you, my love. And we will
Okay.
see all of you very soon. Bye for now. Hello, beautiful alchemist. Thank you, thank you, thank you for tuning in to Reiki Radio today. And a very special thank you to our guest, Christina Prokos. Again, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Christina as much as I did. And you can learn more about her work at ChristinaProkos.com and follow her on Instagram at Christina_life_spiritual_. And the links to connect with her are down in the show description. Also, this month is almost over. And don't forget, if you want to join me for year-long group mentoring in the Alchemy Circle, then you are invited to join me. And the classes begin at the end of December. So get your registration in now. Go to my website, theenergeticalchemist.com, and sign up for the Alchemy Circle. It's an entire year of practice, of working together, of deepening your skills as an energetic alchemist. And it's a lot of fun. As a member, you also get access to the online classes that I teach throughout the year. And you also have the option of joining the Path of Self Mastery, which is access to the Alchemy Circle. However, it also includes one personal one-to-one session with me every single month. So there are options. Hop over to the website and sign up today. I cannot wait to start working with all of you. That is all for now, my loves. I will see you all very soon. Remember to always journey in love.